All right, good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending on when you're accessing this. I wanted to post a brief video to clarify a couple things about the Unit 1 assignment and also how to really start this paper. I'm going to bring up Word first so you can see as I follow along. Some of you may be using a Macintosh, Mac computer. If you are, please remember you've got to save your files as a PDF or as a Word document. I believe you have to click on the equivalent of save as or publish to, and you publish it as a PDF or Word document. If you're using Google Docs online, the process is very similar, but I will caution you that sometimes Google Docs reformats things in a very strange way. My strongest recommendation is that you use Word online because everyone has access to that through YSU. You should be able to download Word to your computer or use Word online. Now the editorials, each one of these editorials is to be 1 page in length, single spaced. Just about everything else that you turn in for the semester will be double spaced, but editorials we're only going to use single spacing. All that I want on these is a title of the editorial followed by your name. We'll call that a byline. So I'm right here, I've got my page set up. I can change the font here to Times New Roman 12 point. I prefer that. You don't want a much larger font than 12 point. It's possible that this will make green text. Okay, it's not good. Alright, so let's say that I'm writing on the Second Amendment, and my stance for this editorial is that the Second Amendment does not really give everyone the right to bear arms. Maybe the way I'm reading the Second Amendment is that only the National Guard, that well-regulated militia, are the people that have a right to have weapons. So, as such, I'm going to title this Only the National Guard Get Guns. That title tells me something about what the rest of this editorial is going to be. And then I have my byline. And so that'll be your name. Now there's a couple different formats that you could follow. You can follow block letter format, where everything is flushed to the left and you use an extra line spacing between those paragraphs instead of indenting. I'm going to briefly write a little bit here and just whatever comes off the top of my head so that we can see kind of how this goes. Let's see. Most people think that the Second Amendment gives them the right to keep and bear arms. That is true, however, only if you ignore some of the clauses that are mentioned in the Second Amendment. One of those clauses relates to a well-regulated militia. And then I can hit the enter button and I'll start writing again. This is called block letter format. I've just got an extra space between each paragraph. That's fine. I could indent them like this, which is how most writing is, but we don't really do this for the editorials. Since they're more of a letter, it's more conventional to just have the paragraph flushed to the left. So this, as I said, is called block letter format. I've not called this editorial 1 or anything like that. This document that I'm creating is going to be a standalone editorial that I could realistically send to a newspaper for publication. That's the goal for all of these that we write. You want something that is good enough that you could send it in for publication. Now, one thing that I need to make sure that I do in these editorials is I need to establish what makes this a relevant case. Why is this a topic worth talking about right now? Some of you may be familiar with Senator Kamala Harris, who is from California, and she's running among, I think, 19 other people for the Democratic nomination for president. She has recently said that she would sign an executive order getting rid of guns. I'm sure that that's a very gross paraphrase of what she's wanting to do, but that's the gist of it. So the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is happening in the conversation on a national level right now. Maybe I can reference that here. Kamala Harris, in recent interviews published on CNN, has stated that she wants the average citizen to no longer have access to, I don't think she said actually firearms. I think it was more of assault weapons, assault rifles, assault style weapons. Okay, so I've added a little bit more information in my first paragraph there, which sets the tone for my essay, or my editorial rather. I'm establishing that this is a relevant conversation that's going on right now, and I give one piece of persuasion. If my reader wants a safer America, they need to agree to. Now the rest of my editorial is where I go into more detail. I should use some research here. Each one of my editorials needs to use at least one piece of research. Maybe if I'm writing about assault weapons specifically, maybe I should find some sources on how many mass shootings happen with assault weapons as compared to handguns or pump shotguns or things of that nature. Maybe getting rid of the assault weapons might be a good place to start. But then I have to remember that some of my readers may say that the right cannot be infringed. Well, then we have to look at what does infringe mean. And I noticed that several of you in your discussions, you talked about that. Infringing doesn't mean to completely do away with. It means to encroach, to limit in some way. Now, what are we talking about? Are we talking about limiting the right to bear arms or limiting the arms? If you remember from the text of the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. So what that means is that we cannot limit people's right to have the weapons. We can, however, limit the weapons that they have access to. I think that everyone who's listening to this would agree that me having a fully automatic rifle or a tank or a nuclear bomb would be a bad idea. Not that I'm unstable, but weapons of that don't belong in the civilian populace. Every person should not have access to their own nuclear bomb. I think that makes sense. So there is an existing precedent for limiting the types of weapons that we can have. So I would argue in this editorial that maybe assault weapons in particular do not belong in civilian hands. They belong in only the hands of the military. Now that makes me rethink my title, because this says only the National Guard get guns. So maybe some of my ideas that I'm working through, this editorial is going to turn out to be something different from what I originally intended. Instead of originally arguing that the average citizen does not have a right to bear arms, and that's in keeping with the well-regulated militia clause, I'm going to instead argue about the infringing on the right clause. And those are two different arguments. I don't think I should try to make both of them in the same editorial. Alright, so this editorial takes the stance that the average citizen has no need for these types of weapons at all. So, now for my second editorial, I would keep writing and fill this page, have a really good one. Now my second one, I'm trying to imagine that other side of the view. Now this is where it gets complicated, because I personally believe that no one needs a semi-automatic weapon at all, especially something like an AR-15. I don't think we need that. I think as a society, we've shown that we are not responsible enough to have those. So now I have to put my shoes in the opposition. People probably like you who are listening to this right now, you maybe have grown up as a hunter. You want to have weapons. So I might take the stance that, let's see, it's not the guns, it's the people, by Ronald Field. So I've started my editorial once again. So here in this one, I'm going to say that gun control is not the way to go. That what we really need, if anything, is people control. We need to make sure that people are sane and normal and balanced and not evil, or however we want to approach that. So maybe we need to do a better job of taking care of the people instead of regulating what people can do. So that's how this editorial, my second one, would then take shape. Lastly, I have to write this third editorial, and this is a search for for common ground. I'm trying to understand why people, I'm trying to bring these two different sides of the discussion to the table. I've got people who say that guns should not be readily available. I've got another group that says punish the people, not the guns. So maybe something common sense would be in regulation and registration. Maybe that's a common ground that we can make. Like, okay, you can have as many guns as you want, but they need to be registered. We do that right now for vehicles. I can have as many cars as I want, but I have to pay taxes on each one of those vehicles. I have to license them. Each car has a serial number, a VIN number, and that can be traced to the current owner. Why not have the same thing with guns? Taxes, titles, and registration makes for responsible gun ownership. And my byline again, by Ronald Fields. Okay, so this title then has got me to thinking about what my common ground is going to be, and it's you can have your weapons, but you need to have them registered. You need to have titles, just so that we can trace these weapons, so we have an idea of where they're at. So I hope that this shows you in general how I'm looking for the editorials to be set up and what that they should be. Each one needs to be just one page. Each one takes a different stance on the same issue, and that issue is up to you. Now, whenever you upload these to the peer review Dropbox, what you need to do after you've written as much as you have, as you can see here, like if I were going to submit this, I've got very little writing. I'm not going to get a lot out of this peer review. I've only got really one paragraph, but I've got an idea of what I have for the rest. The more you have, the better you'll be for the peer review session. So I'm going to select all on this document. I can do it by hitting the Control and A button on my keyboard. That selects everything here. Control and C will copy it, or of course I could just go to click on the copy button. And then I'm going to paste that into the discussion forum. I'm not going to attach it as a file. This document is going to be my discussion. So I hope that gives a little bit of clarity to it. Of course, if you have any other questions, let me know. This summer, I plan on being on campus usually only about once a week. I'm teaching 2 online courses, and I live here in Akron, Ohio. I've got my office at YSU, of course. If anyone wants to meet with me, if you want to come in and talk with me about any of your editorials, any of the class assignments, anything at all, just make sure that you send me an email first so that I'll know to be on campus that day. It's going to vary as when I'm on campus, but I can be there just about any time that you need me. So make sure that you let me know. All right, that's all for this video. Hope that it helps, and keep in touch.